Right, so because I want to share the presentation with the larger Nokia community, I'm going to do it in English. That way we can share it with more people. And so, first of all, you see that it's not the Nokia brand that is showing on the presentation. Why is this? Me and a couple of friends, we started an NGO, Inspired Quantum Civilization. And one of the main things we're dealing with in this NGO is how can we drive positive change in the world, and how should the next quantum non-dual civilization look like. Okay, so the topic of this presentation is going to be driving integral change in an age of disruption. And I propose that we start this with a quote. In 1994, Václav Havel, he was a dissident, a rebel. He's one of the main persons responsible for the downfall of communism in Czechoslovakia. He was the last president of the country and the first president of the Czech Republic. And in 1994, he received the Philadelphia Liberty Medal. And what this medal is, it's a medal that is granted to people that have done extraordinary feats in the attainment of liberty for the larger society. And he said the following: I think there are good reasons for suggesting that the modern age has ended. Today, many things indicate that we are going through a transitional period, when it seems that something is on the way out and something else is painfully being born. It is as if something were crumbling, decaying and exhausting itself, while something else still indistinct were rising from the rumble. President Václav was on point with what he said. Since then, we have witnessed incredible changes in the world. We have computers that are smarter than rodents. We have narrow AI that is smarter than our best chess players, our best Go players, and even our best Dota players for e-game fans. We have a European single market that has encompassed ex-communist states, which political scientists at the time when Václav did his speech at the Philadelphia Liberty Medal Award was by many thought to be an impossibility. And we have platforms that bring together one third of the world population and allow them to interconnect. But not everything is actually so green. Until the end of the 2000s, what would have thought, given how peace and freedom was spreading throughout the world, that Fukuyama was right with declaring the end of history after the fall of the Berlin Wall. But he wasn't, because since then we have had ever greater inequalities. We have ever greater rates of mental sickness, and we are on the brink of a mass extinction that will make even the Permian extinction, the Great Dying, which killed 93% of all living beings on Earth, look like a small feat, because we're about to release a runaway greenhouse effect on the world with our actions. Basically, we have managed to generate a system-wide minimization while ensuring local maximization. This is the problem that humanity is dealing with right now. And to better illustrate this, imagine the following. You, each and every one of you, is the aggregate of humanity. You are the total of the human population on Earth that's represented by you. And you wake up. And when you wake up, you look around and decide, okay, so what am I going to do today? I'm going to destroy some nature. I am going to ensure that I bring violence and harm upon others. In this case, others is myself, so you're basically beating yourself. At the same time, I will ensure that I will maximize my unhappiness in the aggregate. Well, it's fun, right? So, how did we get here? What are the problems that we're dealing with now? And this is the tip or the three tips of the icebergs that are characterizing the current issues that the world is dealing with. First is the ecological divide. Next is the social divide. And third is the spiritual divide. The ecological divide is about the difference between self and nature. We have a conflict now. we are seeing ourselves as individuals that are separate from nature. We are consuming right now, as a fact, 1.5 more resources than the Earth can regenerate per year. What's the social divide? Well, the social divide is the difference between self and other. This refers to the rising levels of inequality, to the various social tensions and fragmentations that are manifest on a global level right now. Worldwide, we live on a thin and fragile layer of order that was been built carefully for thousands of years, millennia and millennia. But right now, if we have a look at the facts, what do we see? We see 1%, less than 1% actually, 62 people according to Oxfam, that own 50% of the world. In the US, you have 1% that owns 90% of the wealth. This is the social divide. Finally, we come to the spiritual divide. This is the difference between who I am now in the present and who I want to be in the future. We're in conflict between our present selves and our future self. And when this conflict appears, what we get chronic fatigue syndrome, we get anxiety, we get depression, and we get suicide. And all of these become more and more natural as the years go by. And Harari, in one of his best-selling books, Homo Deus, said, in 2012, 620,000 died due to human violence. In contrast, 800,000 committed suicide and 1.5 million died of diabetes. Sugar is now more dangerous than gunpowder, and the average person is more likely to kill themselves than to die due to war or terrorism. I would like you to let this sit and sink in for a second, because what we need to realize is that these are the symptoms of a far deeper problem. If we look at the structural level, we have the ecological issue, where we have the conflict between neoliberalism that says you can attain a growth economics that says you can attain unlimited growth, and the reality of scarce resources and entropy. We have the income issue, ever-growing inequalities, and we are not actually embodying the basic human rights that each and every person is born and is equal in the face of God that liberalism has presupposed in its inception through Locke. We have the financial issues, where we are living in an age of speculation. Real economy doesn't actually count. What counts is the market. We have a technological bubble where we are fixing symptoms instead of fixing the issue. Currently, we are looking at creating smart fridges instead of using technology to help the poor in the south of the world that are suffering and dying in the millions. We have a leadership problem. We still use old principles of leadership. We do not act in a direct, distributed, and dialogical manner. We do not understand what it actually means to be a willing individual and the power that each and every one has to change the reality that is next to them or in front of them. And of course, the consumerism issue, where we have the difference between GDP and happiness. There have been many studies that said after a certain level of income, your happiness doesn't increase anymore. There's a logarithmic limit to where it can go. We still do not see this. And of course, we have a governance issue, it's the conflict between the voiceless and those that have, and the interest groups that hold the resources in the end. We do not give voice to everybody. We're still too much oriented towards competition instead of cooperation. We need to redefine these borders. And we have an ownership issue, which is, we have ownership in the state, we have ownership in private hands, but then the question is, how does this ownership influence and better social good? How can it maximize social use? So let's go a bit back and look at some ancient wisdom. This stays of the root of Western society, And it is, in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. This is a combination that happened by the fusion of the Judaic system of thought and Judaic religion, and the Stoic that has a history in the Greek and Roman system of thought. And what is important here, what is actually stated, the Logos is then can be translated in three forms. It is reason, it is thought, or it is word. The simplest translation is with word, but any student of thought knows that what it actually means, and that's a combined trinity. And the idea behind this is that for the last 2.5 millennia, Western thought has said the following. It seems that our reason, our thoughts, our internal dialogues are what sit at the formation of our inner and outer world. Thought and expression creates the world. One of the domains of thought that has been most influential in both the way we deal with other people and both the way we deal with nature has been political economics. So now, I will bore you for like 2-3 minutes with a short review of the evolution of political economic thought. But what I can guarantee is that if you pay a bit of attention to this, you will have gotten the essence of how political economics has evolved in the last 300 years. And at the end, there's a reward, a nice video. So, the first system that was created was the state-centered system. It required a traditional mode of awareness. The second one was the free market system. It required an ego awareness. The third one is the social market system. It required a stakeholder awareness. So the first is based around hierarchies and control. What it offers is stability. You need to understand that when this system appeared, the world was still mostly in a transition towards secularism. There was a lot of chaos in the world at that point. And we have economic systems and political systems that reflect this. In the face of chaos and instability and violence, they come with force and impose something in a hierarchical order. These are mercantilism in the West, Leninism in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet bloc. The thing is, they like dynamism, and they lack self-will, self-governance. And so the second system appeared as a response to this, the free market system. Here, me counts. Here, markets and competitions are important. The entrepreneur first appears in this system of thought, and there are debates about how entrepreneurs create value and why there should be more of them in the world. Adam Smith appears, and the classical economists. We are talking about laissez-faire economics, which, if you translate it, literally means let it make economics. We are talking about free market capitalism, and we are talking about more and more economic growth and wealth generation. At the same time, we are talking about ever-growing inequalities, poverty, and environmental catastrophes. So the third system came about. And this third system said, okay, at a local level, if we start networking between each other, if we start negotiating, communicating more, we can actually deal with the negative externalities of the free market. The problem is that, yes, this does generate local maximization, but as we've seen earlier, it also ensures global system-wide minimization at the same time. The basic concept that each and every one striving to attain on an egoistic principle their maximum utility, be it as a group or as an individual, still proves to be wrong to this day. We didn't get it when it was just the free market version. We're slowly getting it now in the stakeholder version. Last, this is a system that is now emerging, the co-creative system, which is about ecological awareness, system awareness, understanding that you're within the system, you're working as a system, and that what you do affects others strongly. This is about taking responsibility for the collective result. you yourself taking responsibility for the collective result. It means see what you see. If it's something is wrong, you look at it, you think about it, and you act, and you encourage other people to act. Now, how did this system of thought emerge? And in philosophies, in religion, this is very old wisdom. Every religion speaks about the ecological nature of reality, that we're all interconnected. All mystics have talked about this for thousands of years. We just haven't listened. But in the secular world, it happened when we went to the moon, and I will let Jason Silva, he's a social media philosopher, a public speaker, a psychonaut, transhumanist, and I'm gonna let him present to you in 5 minutes this.
There's a great anecdote about the very first photograph taken of Earth from the vantage point of space. The idea was that this photograph occasioned a profound shift in our understanding of ourselves. You see, for the first time in human history, we could look back at our planet in its entirety and see the big picture. This provided an ontological awakening. It changed our story, our narrative. It upgraded our self-image. It expanded our consciousness. New maps for new realities, as they say. Astronauts in orbit call this experience the overview effect, a boundary-shattering sense of revelation and global interconnectedness, where we shake off our petty differences and emerge with a sense of global responsibility, global consciousness, and global citizenship. Carl Sagan's famous Pale Blue Dot film echoed this same idea. From the vantage point of space, there are no lines dividing nations, no geographical subdivisions, no flags or racial divides or disputed territory. There is only Earth, a single celestial body teeming with life, the womb in which we dwell. Yet the fact is, our historically myopic point of view, most certainly our limited perspective, has resulted in much animosity. We have all too often organized ourselves into competing hostile tribes, subjugating each other for land and resources, and misrepresenting the big picture into a story of borders, subdivisions, and dividing lines. Too much hostility, not enough empathy and compassion. Cultural differences, religion, tribes, nation, race, these are creative expressions and variations that should and could be celebrated. Instead, they've become symbols that are all too often used to create suffocating boundaries. And they are increasingly ill-conceived to address the challenges of a hyper-connected global world. As advancements in technology and information enable greater mobility of ideas, goods, and people, the role of the physical border is shifting and due for an upgrade. Conflicts remain, and too many people are restricted access to the increasingly fluid means of migration, transportation, and movement. Migration has always been a defining factor of the human experience. Migration has and continues to touch all nations, cultures, and regions, all peoples on the planet. Migration has been the seed at the heart of thriving societies, accelerating the dissemination of knowledge and ideas. Restricting migration is ultimately like restricting the flow of ideas. In much the same way that we don't tolerate censorship or book burning, we might consider the ways in which restricting the free movement of people can be equally punishing to the idea of human flourishing. The desire to become a global citizen is human. We all have it, and we all share the same goals for safety, comfort, and prosperity for our family. Some are fortunate enough to be able to invest in a second residence and citizenship, while others are forced to seek asylum for their survival. Being a global citizen is also about the strong and the wealthy helping the weak and the poor, as we saw with the Global Citizen Tax Initiative. Border disputes, conflict zones, armed borders, these are things that persist and need to be addressed. We need a new story, a new lens with which to address these inconsistencies. We need to scale up to unleash a truly global citizenry, exchanging ideas, beliefs, goods, and services. It has been said that empathy rarely extends beyond our line of sight. And so perhaps it is by extending our gaze, using marvelous new storytelling tools like virtual reality, that we can bridge divisions and bring worlds together, ushering in a form of radical empathy, to see the other as ourselves, where boundaries are dissolved and compassion reigns supreme. A massive transformation of consciousness, a software upgrade for mankind, birthing a new kind of global citizen. We can do this.
So, in order to realize the system that is presented in the co-creative structure of political economics, in order to realize and bring forth the change that we have realized as a secular community since the 1960s with the first moon landing, what we need to actually do is we need to tackle the root cause. And we need to go and change the source of the problem. This is the deepest and most fundamental level at which we can enact change. And this is what generates everything that was presented before and that we're trying as a global community to solve right now. And the source is actually our own identity. It is our energy, and it is our sense of who we are. William O'Brien, the former CEO of an insurance company, said the following thing: the success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener. It's not anymore just about the what and the how. It's about how much change you personally can drive. What is your inner alignment that is going to move people? Now, this is something that many have not paid attention to. That climate scientists 46 years ago, when they published Limits to Growth on the mandate of the Club of Rome, did not understand that attention, intention, and presence count. The classical way of developing ourselves was based on downloading information and trying to predict the future based on past knowledge. This, however, does not work if you want to generate change, to make change, if you want to lead the change and want to better the world based on what you are seeing. We need to change our mindset. We need to grasp the future as it emerges in front of us and bring it forth. Otherwise, we cannot generate the change that is needed in the ever-increasing pace of societal transformation and disruption. So the question is then, okay, how do I do this? Well, we start by observing the system from multiple angles. Then we need to retreat and we need to reflect on this. What have we seen? We need to allow our inner knowledge and understanding to emerge. Here we access our deeper sources of intuition when we do this. Then we come out and we start rapid cycle prototyping. This needs to take place on a small level so you don't mess anything up if you make a wrong move, but it should be a level that's big enough for you to get the feedback that's necessary to continue and develop what you have reflected about in the future you saw in front of you in your moments of reflection. And finally, well, this may sound like the standard process of innovation, and I'm saying that I'm proposing something different. You will ask, well, okay, where's the difference to this? And the difference, as William O'Brien said, is within the internal condition. Because we need to go about this with three things that are essential: an open mind, an open heart, and an open will. What does an open mind mean? An open mind means that we go about something without biases, without prejudice. We need to let go of all our old systems of thought when we try to engage a problem and try to find the solutions to a problem. An open heart means empathy. I'm not looking at this problem from my perspective alone anymore. I'm looking at it from your perspective and your perspective. I'm putting myself in your shoes and I'm saying, okay, How do you see this? How does this affect you? And then it's about open will. It's about having the ability to let go of what was and allow the new to manifest itself, free of your absolute control, because you will not be able to control it fully. And if we are to summarize this in 3 words, it means we need to be curious, we need to be compassionate, and we need to be courageous. Now, if we choose to do the opposite, what happens? If we choose to do the opposite, we are basically blinding ourselves by projecting old images. We become more entrenched in our own view. We disconsider the other. We hold onto the old and get disconnected from higher future possibilities. This is the process basically that has brought us climate change, that has brought us Brexit, that has brought us Trump and all the big men that are currently running the society. This is the same process that has brought climate change. And if we look at it and disseminate it, we see we did not accept the scientific evidence when it came down to climate change. We didn't empathize with the victims, particularly in the global south. We undermined the credibility of the climate science. We actively blamed others for what's happening, and we defunded environmental protection agencies. Now, what we basically did, we entered a path towards destruction. If we want to enter a path of creation, we need to keep these 3 fundamentals in mind: curiosity, compassion, courage, open mind, heart, and will. We need to suspend our judgments, redirect our attention towards the perception of the other. We need to bring our perception, the perception of the other, together and reflect upon it. Then we need to ask ourselves if we expected the 3 virtues that I just mentioned. Then we need to let go of the past. We need to let the future crystallize itself in front of us and let it emerge. Give it a space to develop, but not the way we want it to develop, but the way the ecosystem, the way that ecological intelligence that allowed us to see it first wanted it to develop. So in this case, before I close, I have a couple of reflection questions that I'm going to offer you. So I would like you to take a pen and a paper. You don't need to share your answers to these questions with anybody. They are just for you so you can reflect afterwards on them. And I want you to keep your answers short. So you'll have a bit less than a minute per question after I read it out to actually answer it. So, yeah, we'll let the pens and the papers go around the room, and then.